Hi, it's Sean, and it's the 3-month vacation. What do you do when someone dumps their junk all over your lawn? We were renovating the kitchen. Since the old kitchen had to be dismantled and removed, we hired a dumpster. This dumpster was located just outside our house, and it looked enormous. Yet, within a day of the work starting, it was filled to the brim. The dumpster company wouldn't remove any excessive junk, and it looked like we had slightly exceeded our quota. And then things took a turn for the worse. A van drove up early before dawn and emptied its junk on our lawn. It consisted of an enormous amount of packaging material and cardboard. It wasn't a last-minute decision either. They had taken the time to black out all of the delivery details and even ripped off the packaging information so we could not track them down. They knew exactly what they were doing and even tried to force some of the junk on top of the dumpster. Then, realizing that they may be caught in the act, they threw everything on the lawn and drove away. Would you get mad if something like this occurred? Surprisingly, we had a chance to get back at these jokers. Like many crimes, the perpetrators often make one tiny mistake, and in this case, they had left one label with the courier's name and the tracking number. It was easy to find the address details on the website or to call the courier company and explain the situation. Except we decided not to do anything about it. We realized that they were somewhere in the neighborhood and we had at least a tiny chance of confronting them, but we decided to let it go. Letting it go doesn't always work. There are things that you should pursue. However, in most situations, we have a few benchmarks that keep us sane. Let's cover those 3 benchmarks in today's podcast. The first is, can I change anything? The second is, can they change anything? And the third is, will things get better? Let's start out with the first one, which is, can I change anything? You know how some people honk like crazy when someone cuts in front of them? Well, I guess I've done the same before. Right after the honking incident, do you think I feel better? Not at all. My heart is racing, and so much of what happens next depends on the other guy. He might give me the finger, which then gets me really mad. You see where this is going, right? The problem with something that just happened is that it already happened. It's in the past. It's part of history. There is no undo button, and if you knock over a cup of water, you can yell, you can jump up, you can even swear, but the carpet is still wet. We often react strongly to events that are just seconds old, but already unchangeable. I call this the present past. We're faced with dozens of situations in everyday life that are in the present past tense. We all live in what I call the present past. Things happen, we can't change them, but we get upset. Why? Because we want to have control. And why do we want to have control? Well, we wanted to have control since we were babies. We've always wanted things our way. And when life breaks the rules, like traffic rules or how websites should work, we react. But I started asking myself, can I change anything? If the answer was no, I'd stop fretting. I'd stop getting angry at the unexpected rain, the service downtime, or a waiter's mistake. If you can't change anything, you have to let it go. However, there is a little twist that comes up when you're dealing with other people. Maybe it's the waiter at the restaurant, or someone who could do a better job. Shouldn't you complain? Shouldn't you do the right thing and tell the organization so that they can fix something? You may be all Zen-like, but shouldn't they change? This takes us to the second part of today's podcast, which is looking at the other side for a change. Imagine you went out for dinner and the service was not as amazing as you would expect. Maybe the waiter mixed up the order. At this point, most people get really upset. I need to speak to your manager, they say angrily. If you were to go back to the restaurant a day later, would the waiter be fired? Not at all. That's because the restaurant doesn't care about your complaint. If they're smart, they'll give you a free dessert. They'll even take a little off your bill, but they're not likely to fire the staff member. It's often because they can't. It takes a lot of time to get the staff member up to speed. Even if you are able to fire someone on the spot, you have to replace them with someone else. That someone else has to be trained or has to get used to their system, and you don't know that someone else could be worse. This is why you will run into a situation where nothing changes very much. The reluctance of the service provider is because they have little control. There are other things that they need to consider as well. The job market may be very tight. They may not get as many good applicants, and so it goes on. In an unreal world, everything would work out just fine. However, since there's always going to be hiccups, it's best to take those hiccups as part of the experience. Yes, you can complain, but most of the time, it will not result in you having a better experience. You will be angry, your friends and family will feel the frustration, and you'll all end up complaining for the rest of the night. I used to be that complainer. I'd get upset, and then I'd go on endlessly. And at some point, I decided that in most cases, the organization can't easily make changes. So I step into a cafe, and if the coffee is bad, I simply pay the bill, and I don't think about the coffee. I don't drink the coffee. I move on to the next cafe, and with a little luck, they meet with my expectations. I suppose the only time you'd ever want to complain is if the situation keeps recurring. If the lawn mowing guy is always messing up, you have to complain, or you have to get a different lawn mowing service. If the coffee is terrible several times in a row, you have to let them know, or you have to move on. However, barring a recurring problem, you can quite easily ignore the problem. Just move on. Why? Because the organization can't easily make changes. So you might think, well, I can make changes to my own self. I can be the Zen-like person, but they're the ones that are the problem. And they're the ones that struggle to make the change. So if you want to make those changes, the only person that can make the change is you. We can all make changes to ourselves. And that allows us to keep calm even when things go crazy. So yes, we look at ourselves and somehow we have to calm ourselves down. But even when the other person is at fault, well, is it going to change? The third part of today's podcast is about things getting better. Will they get better? Remember those guys who dropped their junk on our lawn? We could have got revenge. While we were on our walk, we spotted the van, we spotted the remaining packaging, and hey, we had the house. This was our chance. We could dump our garbage. We could take their garbage and put it back on their lawn. Would that make things better for us? I don't think so. Even if we could justify our actions, it would only bring some petty satisfaction. On the other hand, it could also start an unwanted battle. In most cases, it is better to do nothing. While this might seem like being walked over, that's not the case. I've seen the opposite side of doing something and doing a lot of something. When I was 13 years old, my parents got involved in a property dispute. It went on for the next decade and the decade after that. When I was 40, they were still fighting over it. Was it worth it? I don't think so, which is why I tend to demur on the side of do nothing, or to do something that makes sense. Eventually, the way the case got settled was my father just went across to the other lawyer, And he said, look, why don't we just figure this thing out? We've been battling this one case for so long. And even then, his lawyer, my father's lawyer, kept saying, no, don't be the weak one, be the strong one. We can fight them. But all of this fighting really ends up in nothing. I say nothing, but eventually it ends up with a lot of anxiety, high blood pressure, and just annoying everyone around you, including yourself. My parents' story is one thing, but we've had problems in New Zealand with our neighbors and the fence, and that got settled with a little give and take. On the other hand, we've had our products at Psychotactics, and they've been pirated for over 2 decades. And we've never bothered to go after the pirates. Sometimes you just don't bother. Sometimes you just have to be like a parent, and parents have this rule: you can't win every battle with your kids. Well, that rule is true for most things in life. Your calm is more important than winning some petty points here and there. There may be things that you have to fight for, but most of the things that drive us crazy, they don't fall into that category. Instead, it's the tiny, inconsequential things that set us off. And things don't get better, so why bother fighting? Stay calm. Ask yourself, first, can I change anything? Second, will they change anything? And the third is, even if I fight, will things get better? That's a big checklist, and it's difficult to cope with this all at once. So you have to start at the first place, and that is, can I change myself? Can I just stay calm even when things are going crazy, when the website is down, when the email's not going through? Or like this morning when I was trying to record this podcast, when nothing was being recorded and I had to reboot the computer and still the program wasn't recording anything. Can you stay calm? You have to, because that's the only thing that's within your control. And this brings us to the end of this podcast. Let's find out what's happening in Psychotactics land. This week, we have the cartooning course where you learn how to draw a character. It's not just information about cartooning, it is a precise skill. You learn how to draw the character. And I hope that you jumped on that course very quickly, because I think there are 3 seats left, and this is within a few days of announcing it. It's a very popular course because the courses that we do at Psychotactics are not about information, they're about skill. The article writing course is coming to an end as well. And you can go and speak to anybody who's done a Psychotactics course or workshop, and this is spanning 2 decades. And you will find that they have the same answer, that they get a skill. They learn how to take better photographs, how to approach strangers and take better photographs, how to draw a character, how to write articles, all the how-to stuff that you've been thinking about. Instead of just reading about how to, you learn how to. You become that person. You go from one station to the other station and you reach your destination. It doesn't depend on who you are and how skilled you are or how talented you are. That's a lot of rubbish that you were told as a kid. And the only way for you to know that it is silly and it is rubbish is to find a teacher. And when you find a teacher, you will realize that it wasn't you that was the problem. It isn't you that is the problem. It is the teacher that is the problem. The responsibility of the learning lies with the teacher. Anyway, long speech. I'll end this podcast now. Stay calm and enjoy yourself. Still listening? Well, one of the techniques that I used to do to stay calm was I'd pass the problem on to someone else. I was in Frankfurt, Germany. I was walking with my good friend Herman, and we got to talking, and he asked me how I seemed to manage these rather unnerving problems. I told him, well, I just say to myself, this isn't my problem, it's Herman's problem. He stopped, he smiled, he looked at me and said, oh, so this is why I've been having so many problems recently. Yes, Herman, that's the reason. Now you know. I'll say bye for now, and we'll see you in 5000 BC. You haven't checked out 5000 BC yet? Go check it out, 5000bc.com. Bye-bye.